Good morning, guys, or good afternoon, whether you're joining me from the present or the future. Welcome back to another one of my FutureFight Vanguard series. So today we are going to be talking about the Yasuie GB8 deck, or this is Murakumo's GB8 deck, but the only Murakumo deck that's kind of relevant is Yasuie. So that's the deck that we played. Couple updates. We did have a winner for the contest. The winner was James F. That's his YouTube name. So he did come forward. So thank you guys for all competing in that and entering that contest and supporting me. The patrons also been getting some love recently, so thank you guys for that. Also, at the end of every single one of my videos is a list of like appreciation for my patrons. So yeah, thank you guys so much for supporting me with that. I will be letting you guys know on tomorrow's video what my plans are for some of the future ideas coming up, like some tournaments that I have coming up that I'm like in the works of planning right now. So of course I don't want to tell you guys anything unless it's confirmed yet. So I'm gonna be waiting till tomorrow because I'm supposed to be working out the plans for it tonight. So I will let you guys know what that is, and then let's get right into the video. So we're gonna unflip all of our strides here. This deck was actually like deceivingly fun to play. I did not expect, honestly. Yeah, I did not expect it to be so fun to play, honestly. So we ran 8 grade 3s, 4 new Yasuie and 4 old Yasuie. I was gonna run 7 grade 3s, but in the Shadowstitch deck, you really need four of copies of your grade 3s, especially with things like Shibaraku Buster, Yasui Tenma, the GB8, Mandala Ryo they all work with your grade 3s basically, or the way that we use them work with our grade 3s. So we want to have 4 ofs of both of our grade 3s. So the skill of new Yasuie, this is the one that you want to preferred ride. So at the end of the battle that this unit attacked a Vanguard, it has Shadowstitch. So Shadowstitch, for those of you who don't know, is Murakumo's special keyword. And every time the unit attacks, if it doesn't hit, so it usually says it has to attack a certain target, so it usually says Vanguard. So at the end of the battle that your unit attacked a Vanguard, if that unit did not hit, then you get whatever Shadowstitch ability is on the card, and sometimes other cards too. Sometimes the units don't have to be the one attacking to get a Shadowstitch, like Tanba right here. We're getting Tanba very soon in like a promo type thing. I think it's the promo for this fall's Bushiroad World Qualifiers, but I may be mistaken. Don't quote me on that, but but yeah. So we're getting that promo soon, and that will make this deck a lot better. So we have 4 Stealth Rogue of the Trial Yasui. First skill is Shadowstitch. At the end of the battle that this unit attacked a Vanguard, if the attack did not hit, you get to draw a card and then choose a card from your hand and put it to the bottom of your deck. What this allows you to do is it allows you to basically stack the bottom of your deck and allows you to put triggers back to your deck after you've already used them, therefore them being in your hand, or after you've drawn them. So that's why we run draw triggers. Lantern Ghost is the best draw trigger, by the way. So for all you haters out there who's hating on the Lantern Ghost, it even says, "Woo, that's hot" on the card. This is a hot card. But yeah, so basically it allows us to reuse our draw triggers, stuff like that. So it's almost like we're running more than 4 because we get to put them back. The only way that we can't put back triggers is from our drop zone, so or a damage zone. But once things are in your damage zone in this deck, they're pretty much gone anyways unless you heal them out. So the second ability is on stride. You can counterboss 1, choose one of your units, search your deck with 1 card with the same name as that unit, call it to rearguard, and then you give it a Shadowstitch ability that says at the end of the battle that this unit attacked a Vanguard. If the attack did not hit, return this unit to your hand. So what that means is it's very important that it says unit and not rearguard, because this Yasui says rearguard. So new Yasui, what makes it so good is you can be facing control and they can wipe your board completely and you can still recover and use the on stride skill. So Usually, even when we are not facing control, we use the on-stride skill to call a Yasuie, a grade 3 Yasuie, because if we're on this Yasuie and it says choose one of your units, you choose your Vanguard when you're on a stride, and that unit technically has the same name as this, since you're on a stride and it shares names with the heart. So you can copy Stealth Rogue of Trial Yasuie and call it to the board, and then if you attack with it and it doesn't hit, you get to bounce it to your hand, meaning that you have Stride Fighter instantly for next turn. So pretty good card. Then we have 4 Fathoming Stealth Rogue Yasuie. This is the old Yasuie, the first one ever released. And it has a Generation Break 2 ability and an on-stride ability. The Generation Break 2 ability says whenever a rearguard is put into your deck due to an effect from one of your cards, you can search your deck for one card with the same name as that card, and then you call it to rearguard and shuffle your deck. So pretty good card. It just makes you plus basically, where if you call a unit out using an ability and it would go out and it would go back at the end of the turn to the deck, you can keep it out instead. So during your turn, it also shuffles your deck. That's kind of important. Shuffling your deck is important in Yasuie in general or Shadowstitch decks, because a lot of times you're stacking things to the bottom. So if you know that you've stacked a bunch of triggers at the bottom of your deck and then you suddenly get to shuffle, then it keeps all your triggers in flux. Like your opponent never knows when you're going to hit them or not. So then it has an on-stride skill that says during your turn, when your G unit strides, you can pay the cost, which is Counterboss 1 as well, just like new Yasuie. So you choose one of your rear guards this time, and then you search your deck for up to 2 cards with the same name as that unit, call them to rearguard circle, shuffle your deck, and at the end of the turn, the units go to bottom. So some key differences between new Yasuie and the old Yasuie is, number 1, whatever is called off of new Yasuie stays. It doesn't go back at the end of the turn. Whatever's called off of this goes back at the end of the turn. However, you get to call 2 copies of whatever you choose, and then you have to have a rear guard, and this one you don't have to have a rear guard. So, yeah. You can ride either one depending on scenarios, and it depends on which one you like better to ride. I prefer riding new Yasuie because it's just infinitely better to me, but some people like old Yasuie better, so I can understand that. Then we run 11 grade 2s. Our first grade 2 is for Yashibayashi. So what Yashibayashi does is it has 2 abilities. The first one says when it's placed on the rearguard circle, you can Soul Blast 1, and until the end of the turn it gets plus 2,000 power, and a Shadowstitch ability that says at the end of the battle that this unit attacked a Vanguard. If the attack did not hit, countercharge 1, choose one of your units, and it gets plus 2k. So the first skill is kind of decent, helps you with your counter blasts, so you're pretty good on counter blasts when you have this card. And then also, the second ability is what makes it so good. So the second ability is if you have a grade 4 or greater Vanguard with Yasuie in its name, aka if you're on a stride, because every stride that we have will have Yasuie in the name because of our heart being Yasuie. So remember, they share names. So if you have a grade 4 or greater Vanguard with Yasuie in its name, this card can attack from the back row. So you can play this card in the back row after you already have attackers in the front row and just attack from the back row during your turn. So that's really good. Then we have 4 EQ. So what EQ does is it has 2 abilities. The first one is a Shadowstitch ability that says at the end of the battle that this unit attacked a Vanguard, if the attack did not hit, choose one of your units. It gets 2,000 power, and it can attack from the back row. So on the turns where you call these to the rearguard circle, Yasuie Gomas, if you have them in the back row and they're 15 and your opponent's at like 4 or 5 damage and they decide to guard EQ, then you just give 2,000 power to Yasuie Goma and then attack with her from the back row. So you can make like 5 good attacks without triggers, usually on your turn, assuming that your opponent guards. So you want to get them to 5 damage as fast as possible so that they have to guard everything. Then we tried running this card and it worked out well in some situations. So it's 3 Stealth Rogue of Compression, Sarashina Hime. Yeah, Sarashina Hime. So what this does is it has 2 abilities. First one, Shadowstitch. At the end of the battle, this unit was boosted. Ooh, when I said this has 2 abilities, I forgot that I forgot to say EQ's second ability. So EQ's second ability is when it's placed on rearguard, it gets plus 2,000 power for each of your opponent's Yasuie units. Each of your Yasuie units. Meaning that when you play it and your Vanguard has Yasuie, it automatically gets 2k and becomes 11k, able to hit a Vanguard. And then most of the time you have like 2 or 3 Yasuis, so it'll get 4k or 6k, so pretty good. So back to Sharashi Nahime. This card has, at the end of the battle, this unit was boosted and attacked a Vanguard. If the attack did not hit, countercharge or soul charge 1. So it refuels your soul, which is one of the reasons that we ran it. Unfortunately, it has to be boosted, so I would prefer that it didn't have to be boosted because I would prefer to use the spot behind it as a spot for another attacker, since things can attack from the back row in this deck. But it's not as bad as it seems. And then its other ability is when this unit is placed on the rearguard circle, choose one of your other units and stand, and then you can have that unit get minus 5,000 power until the end of the turn. And if you do, this unit gets plus 5,000 power. So in some situations, it's better to do this skill because you want it to be a 13k base, and we do run stand triggers, so when it restands, it'll be 18. And sometimes losing 5k is like not a big deal. Like for example, when you're on Yasuie Goma, when it loses 5k, like it's still 10k. So, and then we have 4 Ataka, the Stride Fighter for this deck. Pretty self-explanatory. 4 unflip PGs. Our counterblasts are important to us, so we run 4 unflip PGs. Then we run 4 Onibayashi. So this card is mainly used to fuel our soul, but it has a really good ability like as well. So basically, at the end of the battle that your unit attacked a Vanguard, it has Shadowstitch. So at the end of the battle that any unit attacked a Vanguard, if the attack did not hit, this unit gets an ability until the end of the turn. So that's very important to notice because a lot of people think that you can do it right when, like if your opponent no guards the first attack, you can't do it because you need to have Shadowstitch go off at least one time during your turn for this ability to even be active. So the ability that I'm talking about that you need to be active is when your unit's attack hits a Vanguard, you put this unit to your soul if you have a Shadowstitch Vanguard or Yasuie Vanguard, which you always will, and then you put the card into the soul, draw a card, and countercharge 1. So this is like a resource refiller. Our soul is really important to us in this deck, and we use a lot of soul sometimes, so getting having 2 of these or 3 of these on the field is like really pressuring for your opponent, especially if they're at like 4 or 5 damage, because you're forcing them to take the first attack so that they can avoid 3 Onibayashis going off, and then you soul blasting them and putting them back to the deck and getting them again. So yeah, that's pretty good. Then we run 2 Tanba. Some of you might think that we should run more, but I opted for running more of Onibayashi. I could have run 3-3, but eventually when I was doing testing, like I just wanted to run 4-2. Because you can always get Tamba back, and you only need 2 of it on the field max at a time, really. So Tamba has a Shadowstitch ability at the end of the battle that any unit attacked the Vanguard. If that attack did not hit, choose a normal unit from your drop zone and put it on the bottom of your deck. Which means, for those of you who don't know the difference, normal units and there's 2 types of units in this game: normal units and trigger units. Trigger units are all of your triggers with a present box on the corner of them, and then normal units is everything else. So you get to choose any normal unit, meaning that you choose things that you can make copies of and put them back to your deck. And then this unit gets plus 3,000 power. So you can even use this card as an attacker if you're in like a turn where your opponent's at 5 damage. You attack them with everything else first, and then you use Tamba's skill on like as many times as you can, and then this card can get like plus 15k and be 22 by itself. So pretty nuts. We do run the Shadowstitch starter, Fugin. So it has 3 abilities. The first one is Forerunner, meaning that it can move back when you ride on top of it. The second ability is a Shadowstitch ability, Generation Break 1, that says at the end of the battle that your unit attacked a Vanguard, if this unit is boosting during the attack, if the attack did not hit, choose an open rearguard circle in your back row, and you can move this unit to that unit. And if you move this unit, you stand it. So basically, what this means is that you can have a constant booster for all your cards. We never really used that part of the ability, but if push ever came to shove, you have that ability to use in case you can't play a consistent booster. So then its second ability is Rest this unit. Choose a normal unit from your drop zone and put it on the bottom of the deck. And if that card has the Shadowstitch ability, choose one of your units and it gets plus 3,000 power. So we use this ability a lot, and you guys will see me returning things like EQ, Yasui usually, Sarashi Nahime, Onibayashi and Tamba, because I like using the skill when you can get the full value out of it, which means also the 3k. Now keep in mind, when you return Yasuie using your starter, you will not give 3k to a unit, because even though it has a Shadowstitch ability worked into its text, it only gains that Shadowstitch ability when you use the cost, or when you pay the cost of playing it. So meaning when it's in the drop zone, it doesn't have Shadowstitch. Moving on to our triggers, we run 8 stand, 4 draw, and 4 heal. Now some of you might look at me like I'm crazy and be like, "Oh, Josh, why no crits? And why did you run it this way?" Because I think that Shadowstitch is best run when you're trying to do like a multitude of your attack, or a multitude of attacks that your opponent has to guard. And that's the way that it works out best, at least in playtesting for myself. So we ran our 8 stand triggers with abilities. So our first stand trigger that we ran was Stealth Beast Drench Serpent. So what Drench Serpent does is it's our Shadowstitch stand, and it has Shadowstitch. Put this unit at the bottom of the deck. At the end of the unit that your unit attacked a Vanguard while this is boosting, you can put this unit on the bottom of your deck, countercharge 1, soul charge 1, and choose a unit, and it gets plus 4,000 power. So pretty good. Also another resource management card, kind of like Onibayashi. Except it doesn't go to soul, it just goes to the bottom of your deck, which is almost even better. Then we have 4 Stealth Dragon Hidden Scroll. So Hidden Scroll is really, really good, and makes me actually wish, most of the time during testing, that I took out 2 Tenmas and ran 2, whatever the name of the restander is, for Murakumo. They have a Vanguard restander, which Hidden Scroll like gets off of automatically. But it was also good to Hidden Scroll and like put things in the back row, and then like attack. So if I had a Yasuie, for example, I could Hidden Scroll, get 2 more Yasuie and place them in the back row, and they can already attack from the back row because of their own abilities. So what Hidden Scroll does is, when it's placed on the rearguard circle, you can put this card on the top of your deck, and if you do, choose a rearguard not named Hidden Scroll, and search your deck for up to 2 copies of that card, call them to rearguard circle, shuffle your deck, and then at the end of your turn, the 2 units called will go back to your deck, to the bottom. And that's another good thing about Murakumo in general. Whenever you copy a card and it goes back to the bottom at the end of phase, it just goes back to the bottom, meaning that your deck composition like never changes, or the way that your deck is placed never changes, so you don't have a chance to damage tech that unit that you put back, so you can consistently call it back to the board. Then we have 4 Lantern Ghosts, as I mentioned before, best draw trigger. Then we have 4 Hagino. This is our new heal trigger from the Fighters collection. Its skill is actually very, very good. When we go into Shira Hagino, the new G Guardian, we get to choose any normal unit from our drop zone and put it on the bottom of our deck, just for G Guarding. So pretty good. Sometimes I put back PGs, sometimes I put back copies of things. You can heal out and stuff like that. Then we have 4 Yasuie Goma. So what Yasuie Goma does is it has 2 abilities. The first one is an axe skill that says you flip a Yasuie Goma face up in your G zone. Then you choose up to 2 face up cards named Yasuie in your G zone and call them to separate rearguard circle. So this would be new for a lot of people, because a lot of people aren't used to strides being able to go in your G zone. So I put this card on my Vanguard just to simulate. But let's say that we were on Yasuie Goma and we use the skill, right? So this is face down and every other card is face down. So we flip this card face up, and then we're able to call it to the rearguard circle. And you might ask, like, oh, what happens when a stride attacks on the rearguard circle? Does it get twin drive? Does it get triple drive? No, it's just like if you had a grade 3 on the rearguard circle, it doesn't get drive checks or anything like that. So it doesn't get drive checks, and then at the end of the turn, all the G units on the field go back to the deck, even if they're on the rearguard circle. So at the end of the turn, these 2 would just go back to the deck. I have to put the guard circle and then put it to, yeah. So they would go back to the deck, and this card would go back to the deck. So, yeah. So when it's mostly your first stride, gives you an extra attacker, and then it has a second ability that says at the end of the battle that your unit attacked a Vanguard. If the attack did not hit, draw a card, and then choose a card from your hand and put it on the bottom. So it has the same skill as grade 3 Yasuie, the new Yasuie. So if you're on it, you get to consistently filter your hand out, so you can have good cards and the cards that you want. Then we run 1 Shibaraku Buster. I like to call this card the original Alfred Holy Saver, because it basically is, but it was in Murakumo first. So, Generation Break 2, Counter Blast 1, Soul Blast 2, choose a card from your hand and discard it, and choose a card from your drop zone and return it to your deck. All of this is happening at the same time, by the way, so the card that you discard for the cost cannot be the card that you put back to your deck. Just be aware of that. But you choose a card from your drop zone, put it to your deck, and since it said a card, you can choose a trigger, meaning that most of the time we usually return a trigger. And then you choose one of your units, search your deck for one card with the same name as that unit, and call it to Rearguard Circle and shuffle your deck. So usually when you're on Shibaraku Buster, you want to choose whatever grade 3 you're on as the target for the copy, because Shibaraku Buster gives whatever it calls drive the ability to perform drive check. And what that means is if it's a grade 3, you can do twin drive. So that's really, really solid. You get 5 drive checks. And then at the end of the turn, it escapes harm by going back to your deck. So pretty good. Then we have 4 Yasuie Tenma. So Yasuie Tenma has a Generation Break 2 that synergizes very well with Shadowstitch. During your main phase, you turn a Yasuie Tenma face up in the G zone to activate the skill, and then to the end of the turn, this unit gets a Shadowstitch ability that says at the end of the battle that your unit attacked a Vanguard. If the attack did not hit, you can counterblast 1 and call this. Look through your deck and call the same copy of the card that did not hit, and then call it to Rearguard Circle and shuffle your deck. So you can basically go attack with Yasuie, assuming that this is the Rearguard Circle. Attack with Yasuie. Skill of Yasuie Goma if they guard it, attack Yasuie, skill if they guard it, get another Yasuie, and stuff like that. And it works really well with Tamba because every time the attack doesn't hit, you can, let's say that this card is in our drop zone. So every time the card doesn't hit, you can attack. And it even works with Vanguard as well, so make sure you guys keep that in mind. So it can be used on Vanguard, meaning that when you attack, you attack here, and then your opponent guards it, and then you can counterblast 1 and call a new Yasuie to the board, assuming that new Yasuie is your heart. And then Tamba will activate at the same time, putting a card back. So let's say that we had, I did not mean to draw that. So let's say that we had a Yasuie in the drop zone, right? And 2 Yasuies in our damage zone. Or sorry, 1 Yasuie in our damage zone because 1 would be on our Vanguard. So let's say we attack with this for 18. And then our opponent guards it. Well, you would think that we can't use Yasuie Tenma to get a Yasuie because we don't have any more in the deck. But what we can do is Shadowstitch is activate at the same time. So Tamba's Shadowstitch will activate, sending this back to the deck, and it gets plus 3k. And then you can use Yasuie Tenma to counterblast 1 and call the card from the deck over the Yasuie, which puts another Yasuie back in the drop zone, and you can just loop it with Tamba. The only thing that stops this is eventually you run out of counterblasts, so that sucks that it's not like a little infinite loop, but it is a consistent amount of attacks. Now, the GB8 Ambush Demon Stealth Dragon Mandala Ryuo, something like that. But the Generation Break ability, Generation Break 8, choose 2 cards from your drop zone and return them to your deck. So we usually return heal triggers or any trigger in general unless there's a specific card that we need to return in order for this ability to work well. So most of the time we find ourselves returning any of the Yasuies in our drop zone, any of the grade 3 new Yasuies, or whatever Yasui we're on, we find ourselves returning that one. And then we call 2 cards with the same name as this unit, meaning you copy 2 of the grade 3s of your heart, and then until the end of the turn, they get a Shadowstitch ability that says at the end of the battle that your Vanguard attacked a Vanguard. If the attack did not hit, you discard 3 cards and you move this stand unit to your Vanguard circle. So what you can do is you can place them in the 2 back row like so, like 1 and 2. When they're called off of the GB8, and it gives the skill to the rearguard, which is brilliant because if your Vanguard attack doesn't hit, you can proceed to return your stride and then ride and then attack again, and then if your Vanguard doesn't hit, you can discard 3, ride the other one too. So you get 7 dry checks, which is kind of insane. As you guys will see, every time that I used the GB8, my opponent just no-guarded it the first time because they knew that they weren't going to live. So I didn't really get to show you guys the full potential of the GB8. So then we have one Sabreeze, which is fine. Because, you know, our opponent sometimes tries to pull shenanigans. And then, as usual, we have 5 G-Guardians. 2 of the unflip, the new unflip Shira Hagino. So what Shira Hagino does is counterblast 1 and choose a face-down G-Guard and turn it face-up. And then when this card is placed on Guardian Circle, that's when you can pay the cost. And then you choose one of your Vanguards. It gets an ability that says whenever your grade 3 or less unit is retired from the guard circle, you put that card on the bottom of the deck. Or you may put it on the bottom of the deck, so you don't have to, but I usually do. Just to refill our deck. And then it gets plus 10,000 shield. So it's a 36k shield. Then anything you guard with goes back to your deck, including PGs for that turn. So pretty good. Then we have 2 Shishi Yuzuki. So Shishi Yuzuki is a G-Guard that can only have its effect to be active if your Vanguard is getting attacked by your opponent's Vanguard. So when this unit is placed on Guardian Circle during the battle that your Vanguard is attacked by your opponent's Vanguard, choose up to one of your rear guards, move it to the Guardian Circle. That unit gets plus 5,000 shield, and then you get to search your deck for one card with the same name as the unit that you gave shield to, and then you call it to the Guardian Circle and shuffle your deck. So very, very solid card. In most cases, it's a 41k. Unless we were to run 2 starters and use it with our starter, in which case it would be a 51k shield. So yeah, pretty good. Only thing that sucks about it, honestly, is that you can't use it against rear guards, and sometimes the rear guards are massive. So then we have 1 Hogan Wing as our last G-Guardian. When this card is placed on Guard Circle, choose one of your grade 1 or greater rear guards. Search your deck for up to 1 card with the same name as that unit. Call it to Rear Guard Circle, shuffle your deck, and then at the end of the battle, that unit gets an ability that says when it's placed into the drop zone, put it into the bottom of the deck. So basically, you call a unit that you have on the board already to the Guard Circle from your deck, and then at the end of the battle, when it goes back to the deck, you get to just put that unit back to the bottom of your deck. So very solid G-Guardian and very solid deck lineup. So we're opening up our Cardfight area again here. And then we're going to load our replay for Yasuie GB8 So it looks like in the first game we're playing against Link Joker, Schwarzschild, which is kind of interesting because I haven't seen this deck in a long time. But yeah, so we're starting out the beginning turns, just riding on each other. He rides his chain ride up, so he got the grade 1 chain ride and the grade 2, which allowed him to lock my starter. So I do ride to 9, and then I attack his Vanguard for 10, no hit, because it's 9 to 10 and I didn't get a trigger. Then he rode Schwarzschild and he thought that it locked it, but it doesn't, because the grade 2 doesn't have a chain ride ability. Which kind of sucks, to be honest. I was expecting that too. But he's using the on-stride skill Schwarzschild to look at the top 5 cards of the deck for a Schwarzschild. Then he attacked my Vanguard, and I no-guarded just so that because I needed damage, even though I could have guarded it. So with that damage, we counterboss 1 when we stride to call a Yasui, and then we use Yasui Goma to flip a card and call it. So then we call 2 Yashibiashis. So our first attack, he gets a heal trigger. Our second attack, he no guards as well. And then our third attack, he no guards as well. So we get a stand trigger, standing our Yasui. And then we attack him for 16. Shadowstitch, drop 1, draw 1, drop 1, draw 1. And then that Yasui bounces to hand. Or it should have bounced to hand if I was paying attention. But yeah, since we called it out and it got the ability to bounce to hand, that column should have never been locked. Or that column would have been locked, but it would only been Onibayashi in the column, so yeah, I just wasn't paying attention, so it actually did kind of change the game. But he does go into Big Crunch, and then he plays a Colony Maker to call out a Limit Break Enabler. So he goes in with his Vanguard and doesn't check any triggers, so we check a stand trigger and then we guard with the stand trigger. Just so that we can stay at 1 damage. So we go into Shibaraku Buster. the second time we stride, and we're using Shibaraku Buster ability right now to counter boss 1, Soul Blast 2, drop a card from our hand, and put a card back from our from our drop zone to the deck, and then we call a card, and then we use our starter skill basically to return a Shadowstitch card to the deck and have our rearguard gain 3k, which makes 6 to 21. Then he no guarded our rearguard. We didn't check any triggers, unfortunately. And then we should have dropped one, drew one as well. But we checked the heal trigger and a stand trigger, which did stand our rearguard. So then we used Oni's skill to put into the soul, countercharge, and draw. And then right now he strides maximum Steel Dragon. I'm guessing because he doesn't have many useful strides that he can use in this deck. So we take his maximum Steel Dragon attack. He does check a draw trigger, putting that to his rearguard, and a crit trigger. So we check a draw trigger as well, and then a new Yasuie. We take the third attack, and then we guard the fourth attack. Or sorry, not fourth attack, but that was the third attack. But we guard what would have been our fourth damage. That's what I meant to say. So then we go into Yasuie Tenma here because it's really effective against Link Choker. We do use our skill to call a Yasuie grade 3 to the back row, and then we call EQ as well. So we attack with EQ, and he didn't, he let it hit. So as a result, we don't get to do anything with our Yasuie in the back row. But we hit a draw trigger, and we use Yasuie Tenma skill to call over it and attack for 11, and then use Shadowstitch. And then I believe that we don't use it anymore because the other one we called to our rearguard circle, kind of foolishly, but I forgot to mention in last turn he hit with Volt Line too, which is why this is still locked because he Omega locked it. And then he went into Big Crunch again and locked it this column this time, and then he's calling another Volt Line off of Colony Maker. So he attacks for 32, I PG, and I unflip one. This time he checks one critical, so putting all effects to his rear guard. And then we G-guard. So if we actually would have G-guarded with our GB8 or with our new G-Guardian, we could have went into the GB8 this turn. But it wouldn't have been good anyways because that's why I didn't do it. Yeah, I remember now. That's why I didn't do it because it wouldn't have been good because both of our front rows are locked. So he did no pass us. We check a stand trigger, another stand trigger, and another stand trigger. So we would have savaged him basically if he 3-to passed us. And then he uses Swords Child's Limit Break 4 to lock all 3 of our cards. If only he was on Glindios, he would win the game next turn, but he's not. So we guard his Vanguard attack pretty easily. We unflip 1 damage, and then he checks a crit as usual for that one, and then we G-guard. And we G-guard with the new one, Shira Hagino. There was no need to use the skill, so we just didn't. And then this time I just attacked 11 to Vanguard. He PG'd it. I did check a heal trigger, give the power to Vanguard, and another heal trigger. So you guys might be like, oh, like you're sacking so hard. But remember, guys, these are like the stacks that I put to the bottom when I was using the Shadowstitch stacking. So he goes into Maximum Steel Dragon and attacks me. I G-guard into Shishi Yuzuki, and what unit? Yeah, so I ended up using the grade 3 just because when I GB8 next turn, I want those grade 3s in my deck. So I 3-to past him. He got a critical trigger, put all to Vanguard, and then he proceeded to check a vanilla and then another trigger. So we take 1 damage, and then we G-guard the other one. And no, guys, we are not at 0 cards in deck. We are at however many we put back during the entire game. Stupid recording system doesn't record that. Then we drew Stride Fodder and went into the GB8. So what we're going to do is we're going to play Yasuie over our grade 3 until +1 so that it can get power. And then we're using the GB8 skill to put back a new Yasuie and a heal trigger. And then we call 2 new Yasuies that gain the ability of the GB8. Fugen will put back the other new Yasui and give 3k to a unit, meaning that this Yasui right here. So then we attack for 11. We use Shadowstitch to countercharge and give +2 to a unit. Then we guarded, or then we attacked for 14. Then we use Shadowstitch to draw 1, drop 1. And then he no-guarded my Vanguard, which I was pretty sad about, but because it didn't allow me to show the full potential of the deck because he didn't no-guard it, so, or because he didn't block it. Yeah, there we go. I'm so used to saying like my opponent didn't no-guard. But in this deck is actually the opposite, like you want your opponent to guard so that you can get more and more abilities off on them and more skills. So then we're having Yasuie GB8 game 2. It looks like this game is against Mega Colony Machinings, to be specific. The machining player starts off and he just passes turn. Or sorry, he doesn't pass turn. It was my turn first. So he attacks me with a little rush. I get a draw trigger and then I get a heal trigger when he attacks with his rear guard. Then I attack him for 14. He no guards. We get Shigino. Then he's rushing us like hardcore. So we're just taking everything to the face because we can barely guard things. So I guard with that draw trigger and then we take another attack. And then we didn't have a grade 3, so we didn't attack, or we didn't do anything, we just attacked him. And then I thought that he would ride grade 3 here, but he proceeds to re-ride grade 2. Then he attacks us for 15, I'm forced to no guard, and then I get a heal trigger anyways, so I heal that damage out, and then I end up guarding with 1 card from my hand. So then I attack Vanguard again, get a stand trigger, stand my rear guard, and he gets a heal. Then he rides to grade 3, I'm guessing because we're already at 5 damage, so it would hurt pretty bad for him to force all these cards out of my hand that he's doing. So he attacks 17, we 2 to pass it. And then he checks the heal trigger, putting it on a card that already has a 15k number on me, so we have to use 20k to guard. And then I just said GG at this point because I didn't draw grade 3. I wasn't going to G assist because there was really no purpose in doing so. So I just instantly lost that one pretty much. But because I gave up on that game, I actually put an extra game in the matches for you guys. So you guys will get to see an extra match today besides just 3. So we're loading Yasuie GB8 game 3. This game we're playing against Dark Irregulars, which is not bad. We got an okay hand. The only thing is we're like thinking about if we want new Yasuie or not, and I decided that we didn't want new Yasuie, so we're just gonna go with old Yasuie, and I was formulating like a whole plan around it. But he G-assisted and then whiffed, so he didn't get to it. Then he plays a rear guard, and then attacks our Vanguard and doesn't get anything. So we ride the old Yasuie, we call it EQ, and then we Sabreeze him, calling 2 more EQs, and then Onibiashi, which, if you guys know anything about this field is pretty godly right now. Unfortunately, he does check a trigger on his damage check, so we go 18. Yeah, and then he can't, he tried to G-guard, and he couldn't G-guard because of that, so yeah, so then we attack for 26, he guards with a 10, and then we end our turn putting 2 of the EQs to the bottom of our deck. He's now G-assisting again and whiffs it. Then adds all the cards back to his hand and shuffles. And then he shuffled and G-assisted another time, but I asked him why was he double G-assisting, and he said he got confused by something I said. So it was kind of like weird because when he double G-assisted, like, he also didn't get a grade 3, which is kind of wacky. Like, that must mean his grade 3 ratio is like really messed up. But yeah, what we did is we decided to just stay G-break, and then we used EQ skill to give 2k to the back row. Then he won past us, and then he guarded all of our attacks, so we couldn't use Onibayashi. He finally got to grade 3, and he goes into Glinzen Vampire. Sorry guys, I'm moving so much, I'm just so restless. But he does put cards into the soul using Glinzen Vampire. Then he uses the Stride Fodder, the Darkness Stride Fodder, to stride. And then he uses the Were Tiger starter to soul charge and draw. And then Flying Librarian. And then he uses Demented to put a card into the soul just now that has darkness. And then he soul charges 3 from his stride skill. And he didn't soul charge any cards with darkness, so he can't put a grade 3 to his hand. But he did soul charge 3 triggers, which is unfortunate for him. And then he proceeds to check no triggers. So also unfortunate for him. And then we just take the rearguard attack because we can. We stride. And then we use Yasuie's skill to call 2 Onibayashi. And then we use Buster to counterblast 1 Soul Blast 2. Discard a card and put a card back to our deck. So we put back Trench Serpent. And then we call Yasuie. That gains his skill. Then we use the Shadowstitch ability to give this Onibayashi plus 3k. So then we attack him for 18. So he no-guarded it, which unfortunately we didn't check anything. Then we attacked him for 17, and then we attacked him for 26. And we checked no triggers, so at the end of the turn we put back those 2 cards. And I could have actually used the GB2 to keep Onibayashi out on the board, which would have been pretty good. But I guess I just forgot about the GB2 of regular Yasuie because I'm never on it, basically. So he goes into Bread of Mouth here and plays a Sharat, like a new Sharat, on the rearguard circle. So then he goes into his battle phase and he's using Assassin's skill to call these 2 out, or he thinks he's using Assassin's skill. But Assassin's skill has to be at the beginning of someone's attack step. So I was telling him that, and he didn't really understand, but he got it after a while. I was telling him that he either had to attack with Sharat Vampire or Bread of Mouth first before you could call them. So he uses the skill of Bread of Mouth to counterblast 1, flip a card in his G zone, put 2 cards from hand into the soul, and then put all grade 0s from rearguard or soul into the deck. And I don't think that he realized that the assassins would go to the deck too. Otherwise, I think he would have attacked with its rearguard first. But yeah, he was telling me the assassins activate before the grade 4, and then he didn't realize that it said rearguard 2. He thought it just said soul. So he puts the assassins back to his deck and shuffles. And then IPG this attack. He checks 3, and one of them is a critical trigger. So he goes, he does the skill to re-attack with his Vanguard. And then we G-guard for 41, which is a no pass. And then he attacks us for 31. And we were gonna G-guard twice and like G-flip and use the GB8, but unfortunately I didn't realize that we didn't have counterblast when I was planning that out in my head, and I forgot that it uses a counterblast. So we just ended up using 2 of the new G-guardians and not flipping, which is fine, I guess, because we Yasuie Goma'd, and then we using Shadowstitch to put a card back and give a unit plus 3k, which we gave the Goma 3k. And then we played an EQ, so we attack with EQ. And he just takes the damage knowing that he can't survive like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, possibly 6 attacks, so that because we were probably going to check some sand triggers. So yeah, that was the 3rd game of Yasuie, I believe. Yeah, because 1st game, 2nd game, okay, yeah. So moving into, yeah, the 2nd game was when I surrendered. So this is the 4th game that I recorded for you guys because of my surrender game. So we're actually playing against Blasters. He says heads or tails. He gets to go first. So we ride and attack. We get another stride fodder. He attacks and no triggers were checked on either side. He uses Wingle Brave to search out Blaster Blade Exceed. Then we attack with our Vanguard and check a heal trigger. He checks a crit. He plays Exceed and Lu trying to rush us. So we no guard. And then he counterboss 1 with Lu, puts it to the soul, and then calls a Blaster Blade. He gets a draw trigger, which he also puts to his rearguard Blaster Blade. He checks the top 7, gets a Blaster Blade card, and then puts Wingle into the soul. Then he attacks with Vanguard, we guard with the draw trigger, and then restands Blaster Blade, and when he attacks with his rearguard, we guard with the stand. Now we're using our skills to call Yasuie Goma and Yasuie as usual. Then we can't really do much else with our hand. So we attack for 15, then we drop 1, draw 1. Then he actually guards the 2nd one and no guards the Vanguard, and we don't check any triggers, so that was a thing. Yasuie Goma goes back to the deck. He goes into Gancelot and plays a Lu, returning a Blaster Blade card to the deck. And then he attacks us for 20. We no guard. Then he attacks us with Gancelot, checks a draw trigger, another draw trigger, which I was like shake my head at this point. Then he attacks us with 22 to Vanguard and then counterblasts and restands Blaster Blade and attacks us again. This time we do Shira Higino because it was pretty much the only one right now that could give us a 31k guard. And then we stride into Shibaraku Buster. So Shibaraku Buster skill. Put back a heal, and then we called a card that would gain a skill. So we attack with 11, letting him know that we have Twin Drive, and he didn't know that we have Twin Drive, so he guarded with a 10k, 2 to pass. So then we check 2, 1's a heal trigger, we put the power to our Yasuie, and then we draw 1, drop 1 from the previous attack. He takes it, so we use Oni skill, put in the soul, draw a card, and then he uses Lake Median Lian to just Soul Blast 1. And then we get a stand trigger, standing our card and getting more guard out of him, which is very, very good. So then he strides into Alfred Holy Saber. He plays another Lu, putting another Blaster Blade back to his deck. And then he uses both Margul's skill to give +6 to Blaster Blade. And then he's counterblasting and discarding a card and flipping it Alfred so that he can give 3k more to Blaster Blade and have it gain the skill to get drive checks. So he attacks with Lu, we take it, checking a heal trigger. We PG his Vanguard. And this is pretty much the point where I knew the game was over, because I was just able to G-guard his attack easy. And then this also puts us at a GB8. So we use 2 cards of Stride because it's worth it to go into the GB8. We play Tanba, and then we use the GB8 skill to put back a heal trigger. And I think we were looking at our drop zone, and we determined that we need to call something over that first, because we had one of our new Yasui's in our damage zone right here. So when we checked for that, like, it was important that we placed over before we put back. So we put back a Yasui and a heal. Then we put back Tamba with our starter ability. Then we attacked with our rear guard for 18. We used Tamba to have a gain 3k. Drop 1, draw 1 from Yasui. Then we attacked for 13. Tamba skill. And then we attacked for 26. And he could have guarded it with the Lake Maiden Lien in his hand, but then he asked me if it would be restand if I didn't hit, and then it said no, that it gave it to rear guards, so the rear guards would move themselves to Vanguard, and then he just no guarded anyway. So I was trying to bait him into guarding, which is kind of stupid, but I wanted someone to guard it at least for once so that we could show the skill. But yeah, guys, that has been the Murakumo Yasui GB8. I hope you guys enjoyed Thursday's video. Like, comment, subscribe, and share the video. Tell your friends about it. Let me know what's up in the comment section down below and what you thought of the video. And check out all of our social media links down in the description below. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Patreon, and of course YouTube, where you probably watch this video unless I linked it somewhere else. But yeah, that has been the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you tomorrow.